Hi, I'm Wendy King with Leadership Lessons Live, and we are here today to share some important information on how to deliver fabulous content on Zoom. It's something to really consider. It just doesn't happen without a little pre-planning. I'm a former chief financial officer, senior executive, and have given many presentations and conducted many meetings, but those were all live. And so now I'm having to pivot and move online, and it is quite challenging. And so I wanted to share some tips with you as a leader about how you can really be effective when you're in a Zoom meeting. So let's get started. Are you struggling with your Zoom connections? Do you and others sound bad and look tired? Do you feel like your meeting isn't running smoothly and you are not able to make your points or interact the way you'd like to with others? Are your Zooms just downright a drag? Well, stay tuned for some tips that will help. Okay, let's talk about content. So let's talk about some tips for the host. First of all, you need to have an agenda. It's really important, and distribute that in advance. It makes a huge difference. It also talks a little bit about how long the meeting will be, and that informs everyone about what to expect before they get there. Suggest people join the meeting in advance, even 10 minutes advance. Make sure you do as well to test out your system. When you start your meeting, also, again, you might want to start with a little informal time and really create time for people to interact with each other. Just like when you go to a meeting where you're in person and hi Mary, how are you? What's going on? Just have that little time for informal communication because it creates connections. Welcome people, thank them for coming, and give them a preview of what you're going to be covering at the meeting. It's important to establish rules of the road. Are you going to be muting all the participants when they're supposed to talk? Are they to unmute themselves? Are you giving people a time period or amount of time they can talk? And you'll be timing them and moving on. Also, be sure as part of your meeting to have a closing and thank people for attending the meeting. They've given up precious time to be with you. Have a script or at least an outline of what you're going to say at the meeting. It makes a huge difference in being able to make the points that you want. If you're going to be giving a lecture, please have it less than 10 minutes. People's attention spans are just very, very short. So keep that in mind. And if you are giving a lecture or even in a more informal conversation, to emphasize your points, be sure to tell stories. I tell the story many times of where I was in charge of the facilities at Georgetown University Medical Center, and within 24 hours, less than 24 hours, President Clinton decided to come give an address to all the medical students, and we had to go ahead and, with very little planning, act very quickly to, for example, clear out all the student lockers, and we had an eye bank so that we had to use that for the president's green room. And my stories usually are around what I'm trying to say, and which is, hey, if you have a great team, you can, in this case, handle a surprise visit, basically from the President of the United States. And think about during your sessions to have a question and answer period at the end and let people know. Again, people want to be able to communicate and interact, not just be lectured to. If you are giving a lecture, you might want to think about using a teleprompter. It can feel pretty stiff, so that's something you need to think about. But I would recommend, if you don't have a teleprompter, at least have cue cards. And those are cards, potentially you can, if you're using a computer, you can put them around the outside of the computer so you can make sure that you make your key points. What can you use to enhance your Zoom meeting? Well, you can use slides, you can use videos, you can have a shared screen, and you can use third-party enhancements to really improve the quality of your presentation that's on Zoom, for example. I use a product, and I'm using it right now, called Ecamm, which interacts with Zoom that allows you to have overlays and bring in other content. You can have titles on the slides or as part of your presentation, and it really does add interest for your presentation. Have a run of the show. Do you all know what that is? In addition to having a script or an outline or an agenda, this is what you're going to do by section that is timed. So you'll know you're going to start at a certain time for this particular topic and end at this point. And it's really great to have the run of the show. One of the things you find out when you have a run of the show is either your content isn't as long as you thought it was, or in fact, it's longer than you've scheduled the meeting for. So it helps you create a crisp and enjoyable presentation. Plan your transitions. When you're going from one participant to the other or one subject to the other, how are you going to do that? So for example, when you have multiple participants, is someone going to say, "Thank you, Mary, for your comments," and "John, is this something you'd like to talk about now?" Plan those transitions because they can be awkward if they're not planned. And what's the most important advice I have for you is practice, practice, practice. You can have a Zoom meeting. You can record a meeting just with yourself a few minutes before your real meeting to test out everything. All right, lights, camera, action. Are you ready to have a great Zoom meeting?